Greetings and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting on Monday, June 1st, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. We are calling the meeting to order at 6:37 p.m. And we'll start with recognition of members present. All city councilors are present. City administrator is also present. And now we'd like you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. We will now move on to item 4 of the agenda, which is general. I have no correspondence at this time for general. Moving on to item 5, committee correspondence to council. Any committee correspondence to council at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Minthorn.
The BSOOB Transit, we had our monthly meeting last week, and everything is progressing as expected as we bring more and more buses and back on the line and expand our routes, and all of that should have started today and will be progressing over the next month. Financials look good. Everything's moving ahead. We're actually going to be receiving 2 new turnpike coaches, hopefully before year end. So things are looking good at transit.
Thank you, Councilor Minthorn. Any further committee correspondence to council? Seeing no further committee correspondence, moving on to item 6, public comment. City Administrator Canrath, have you received any public comment tonight?
I have none at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, City Administrator Canrath. At this time, I would like to invite anyone that would like to speak before the council during public comment to use the raise hand feature in the Zoom, and you'll be unmuted to speak to the council. Okay, we have a hand up from John Harkins. Please make sure to state your name and address for the record. And Mr. Harkins, you're good to go. Mr. Harkins, if you can hear us, please unmute your microphone.
You hear me?
We can hear you now.
I'm sorry.
That's all
John
right.
Harkins for Christopher Terrace. Ms. Coleman is here this evening to employ my services as a computer. She will be speaking to you.
Thank you.
Hi, Councilor, Mayor, City Administrator. I would like to go back to a couple weeks ago when Councilor Copeland was attempting to ask a question in regards to the percentage for pay raises for non-union employees. You actually were driving the bus correctly and had the right amount. You approved 1.9% at the budget meeting that we had last year, which the budget was approved by council, and then an appropriations was given in July of 1.1, making it a total of 3% overall. So in the budget books where you're seeing 4.1, it is an error because they're counting the 3% plus the 1.1% that was added together. Does that now make sense what was you were trying to get for an answer? Can you hear me, Councilor Copeland?
We can hear you.
I just need to know if that made sense. Okay. That's fine. I can't tell by body language things. So secondly, I sent around to council a packet of information that I had been asked to provide to the city administrator and to work through the city administrator, department head, the mayor, and have a meeting. And that never took place. Mr. Harkins and I spent a sizable amount of time before the preparation of the budget and going through analyzing documents. What was sent to you was two major important documents. The first document was the full accounting of all the accounts from July 1st to March 30th, 2020. When you look at the column that says percentage, and there's two of them, the first percentage in that column is the city finance director's accounting. The second is mine. We have a difference of over 4.something%. We have discovered where the issue lies. The issue lies is I am dividing directly into the approved budget. I'm not dividing into what was a proposed budget. So all the little red marks that you see, go through if you would like and do the math, and you will see that that it's being hopscotch between one or the other, depending upon what it is. That makes a difference. 4% on 56 million is over $2.5 million roughly. That's major differences in percentages. Second, attached to that spreadsheet was a list of a number of accounts that had zero budgeted funds. When you set up your budget at the beginning of the year, you either have the funds in it approved or not. The sheet I sent out that it was effective at the end of March 2020 had 1.32 million in funds dispersed all throughout accounts that had no approved budgets. That may not seem like a lot, but at budget time, that is a lot of money. Those funds should have been reclassified correctly in order for a proper budget to be presented to council. There was time to make that adjustment because you guys discussed the council. As a council, you discussed the budget not too long ago. That's a large amount of errors. And at some point, we need to say, what is proper accounting procedures? We're not forecasting. What we are looking at is that day, at that time, at that point, how much does the municipality have and what have the departments spent? I would help council would take a look at what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, do you want to speak?
Are there any other public comment? Anyone else who wishes to speak before the city council tonight? Again, if you wish to speak before the council, please use the raise hand feature of the Zoom platform and you'll be unmuted to speak to the council. Seeing no hands raised and no one seeking recognition, move on from public comment. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for May 11th, 2020 and May 18th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second, or moved by Councilor Minthorn.
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Discussion. I see Councilor Copeland has her hand up. Councilor Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sent an email to you and City Administrator Kainrath last night about this. I can see on Facebook that there's that captioning. So I know that our discussions are being recorded and appear in type. So I'm wondering, why can't we have that transcription attached to what the clerk is providing for minutes?
Andrew, if you can answer the question posed by Councilor Copeland, and that is the text during the video, is that able to be captured for the
Yes.
purposes of providing a transcript? And Communications Director Roy, I think, is going to speak on it.
They've told me
Emily.
that it can be.
Yes, we can pull those if they are requested, if Brian and Michelle Hughes would, if they would like us to do that.
What
Thank
about
you,
if us
Director Roy.
counselors would like that?
Just a
Yes,
question.
that as well. But I'll let Brian can speak to that. But yes, we are able to do that.
Just a question.
Thank you.
As far as the recording of this transcript, what is recording?
On Facebook right now, the words are showing up just as we say them.
So it's Facebook recording it?
I don't know who's recording it, but it's
Sorry to interrupt. I would say YouTube would be the easiest. But yes, we do have the capability of pulling a transcript.
Is that a reliable transcript, having an outside party doing it?
It would require Michelle to make some edits. There are going to be some words that it doesn't automatically recognize.
Okay. I think this topic, as was stated earlier, might be good for a conversation as a future agenda item, the minutes overall and what we're going to do with them. So maybe as part of that discussion, we can talk about using this transcript also. But I think there was the desire among Councilor Copeland and others to have a discussion on this, as Councilor Johnston also, I think, as a future agenda item.
right, but I haven't seen it on any agendas.
I think the idea was right after budget season, we would open up for other issues.
Well, then we're missing all the minutes and all the discussion on the budget right now.
They're still there.
Thank you,
This is a
Councilor
council
Copeland.
decision, so if you'd like to do something right now, as far as that's your discretion. But we did intend to bring it back as an agenda item sometime in the near future. But obviously, it's your call.
Well, I think that why can't we just add it as a tag on and say, these are unreviewed automatic transcript, and just put it on there. Doesn't have to be a big deal.
Thank you, Councilor Copeland. Councilor Johnson.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so, I mean, as it's already been stated, I was hoping to have a future agenda item for this, and I do like this additional idea of a transcript. But again, I'm willing to wait until we can have a full-blown conversation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing no further discussion, no councilors seeking recognition, I'll call for a roll call vote on the minutes. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
No.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
No.
Motion passes 5-2. Moving on to item 8, there are no consent agenda items, so we will move right into item 9, action items. We have under item A, we have second and final reading, 90 Temple Street, map 38, lot 168, and that is a chapter 81 review, and I believe that is Councilor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property experienced a fire in 2012, and the roof has been left open to the elements since then for the past 8 years. The previous owner abandoned the property sometime after the fire, and in 2016, the city obtained the property through tax foreclosure. A timeline of city actions relative to this site is included in below links to previous meeting materials. In February 2020, the staff completed several site visits with the collaboration of the Historic Preservation Commission. They hired Allied Engineering on the city's general engineering service list to complete a structural engineering assessment. The Historic Preservation Commission recommended that the property be sold at its February 26th meeting. The Planning Board recommended its report to sell the property to the city council at its April 7th meeting. The Planning Board forwarded a positive recommendation of its report to the City Council on April 7th. The Historic Preservation Commission recommended the property undergo a Chapter 81 review process on February 26th and provided feedback about the draft RFP on March 11th. Be it ordered, the City Council hereby authorizes the City Administrator to initiate a request for proposal for disposition of city-owned property at 90 Temple Street.
Second.
Motion has been made by Councilor Johnston, second by Councilor Minthorn. Any discussion? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. It's a question. So the motion is authorizing the city administrator to initiate the RFP. My question is, once the RFP is complete, will this come back to council for a final vote to actually sell the property?
My understanding of that question is yes, but I believe Emily Cole Prescott may be available if you'd like to hear from her also. But my understanding is yes.
Councilor Johnston, would you like to hear from Emily, or are you okay with the idea is to bring it back to council? Should they multiple offers or any offer really be received for council to decide? Is it's council's purview to sell property?
Correct. I mean, I'm comfortable with the city administrator's answer, but I know that Andrew looks like he promoted her. So if she wants to speak, I'm fine with that.
And I could be wrong, so let's hear from her.
Planner Prescott, thank you for joining us tonight. You have the floor. Did you hear the question of pending a Chapter 81 review or RFP proposals come in? Would that come back before the council? And City Administrator Kainrath has basically said, yes, that's the case. And we'd like to now hear from you.
Yes, I agree. And I was auto-promoted. So, yes, I believe it's the general process that we would bring back the proposals, and would probably, the selection committee would probably bring back a recommendation from what we get.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. So the only request I would have is that this is a draft RFP that we had in the packet. I'd like to see a finalized one, or send it to council when it's finalized, and I'm requesting that I be added to the selection committee.
May I just ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely. Planner Prescott.
The motion is authorizing the city administrator to put out the RFP, so the whole council wants to review the final RFP, or I'm just worried about timelines because I know it's been a few years, but the structure is in pretty bad shape. So that was
no. I was just saying that once you have finished drafting that RFP, we just receive a copy. We don't need to vote on it. I just wanted it updated.
The final version of it.
Please.
Correct.
If you could email the council the final version of the RFP once it goes up.
Yeah, I'll work with Brian. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnston, your hand is up. Is that from before?
It is.
Okay. Seeing no councilor seeking recognition and no further discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
And Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
and Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Thank you. Vote passes 7-0. Item B, outdoor retail and restaurant operations, COVID-19 temporary policy. Councilor Purdy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In conjunction with Governor Mills restarting Maine's economy, which outlines the gradual stages of reopening, the City of Saco Planning and Economic Development Department, and in coordination with Code Enforcement, Police, and Public Works, is proposing a temporary policy to assist our small business community by facilitating the effective but cautious reopening of restaurants, retail establishments, and other commercial activities scheduled for June 1st, 2020, as allowed by the state. This policy is intended to allow restaurants and retailers in Saco to expand their operations outdoors during the COVID-19 pandemic. This will help businesses to remain open and serve the public safely and in accordance with social distancing requirements and other federal, state, and local requirements. Businesses who take advantage of these temporary changes must follow all items required as part of the state's applicable COVID-19 prevention checklist in order to safeguard public health and continue to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. This policy is proposed to remain in effect through November 1st, 2020. Be it ordered that the City Council adopts the outdoor retail and restaurant operations COVID-19 temporary policy as outlined in the Economic Development Specialist Memo dated May 28, 2020. I move to approve the order.
Second.
Thank you very much. Motion has been made by Councilor Purdy and seconded by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion? Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I never got a question to the email I sent to the council on the actual sale and usage of alcohol on the streets. I have no problem with this policy. I actually encourage it to help all of our local businesses. But is there any conflict between them bringing the alcohol onto technically it's city property that we're going to be allowing them to use? We do have special use permits, and will that be required, or do we have some kind of avenue to allow our restaurants to actually still serve alcohol outside of their premise in the public areas?
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilor Archer. City Administrator Kainrath.
Yeah, we're prepared to answer that question. I wanted to see if we could bring in Economic Development Specialist Jessa Berna, who has that question and saw that question over email, and is prepared to answer that as well as anything else that you may ask.
Great, thank you, City Administrator Kainrath. Good evening and welcome, Economic Development Specialist Jessa Berna. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Did you hear the question that was posed by Councilor Archer?
Yes, and in response, I wanted to just assure you that all, as clearly outlined in the policy, all state and local regulations have to be followed, and that does include liquor licenses. Liquor licenses are administered at the state level, and in anticipation of tonight's meeting, I reached out to our local representative at the state just to make sure that there weren't any changes to the policy as a result of some other liquor law changes resulting from COVID-19. And he assured me that the process is the same as it has always been, which is if you are expanding, if you have a liquor license already and you're expanding into an outdoor seating area, you must request from a state an expansion of that permit to be able to serve alcohol on the premise, and that is administered and enforced at the state level.
Okay, so these our local restaurant owners would, and canteens or bars would have already had to put this in place?
They wouldn't have had to if they are already serving alcohol, which means they have an existing liquor license. Then they must, at this point, file for basically an expansion of that permit to account for the new area.
Okay, and that's considered public areas because once we let them outside onto the sidewalk, Again, I just don't want them to get caught up in the legality, and I'd rather protect them now than after the fact and have to fight it. So again, here we own a bar, or a restaurant, we move our clients onto public property, which the city is granting based on this policy if it passes. They start drinking. They can't do that at this time.
Yeah, and let me just clarify, I'm not an expert in liquor laws, but in order to get these permits for outdoor liquor consumption, there are a lot of requirements on the state side that do require some sort of physical barrier to separate the area.
Yes.
And in our pilot policy, we also ensure the liability remains on the business owner. So it's not as if you're just on public sidewalk and drinking. There are very strict rules at the state level that make sure the area is segmented off, as you see in other communities and sort of outdoor dining throughout the state.
Okay. To help maybe expedite some of these in a temporary nature, the cities are authorized to offer like a special usage permit, a temporary. One example is, I don't know, like when you have a festival. Is that still available in the short term for some of our local restaurants? I know it might be a little burdensome, but they're going to try to maximize their sales as quick as possible would be my guess. And any way we can help would be beneficial.
I am not 100% positive about that, but I will definitely look into that first thing tomorrow morning to see if there's an option to expedite that. I will say in my conversations with, his name is Tony Austin from the State Liquor Review Committee, he did indicate that the state is making every effort to expedite these permits, as the state is seeing a lot of these requests right now. And also that he indicated that if the businesses include the permit as resulting from this policy as a part of their application, that will even further expedite their process. But I will definitely look into what you're saying is sort of a more blanket policy for all businesses, whether or not that is an option we can pursue as well.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Councilor Archer. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I was actually going to head down the same path that Councilor Archer just did, but I think it was largely answered. My other question was, again, I'm supportive of this. It just came down to enforcement and compliance, because, particularly in the downtown, we have many elderly that are either wheelchair bound or, have mobile issues. And so I know the draft there has, I think it's 3 feet of space available to get through. It's not a ton of space, but again, I'm just getting back to how are we going to enforce that? How are we going to ensure people are compliant with it? I'm not certainly looking to put too much extra duties on code enforcement. So I'm kind of wondering if the police department would be surveying that on a regular basis, because the other problem is you have a weekend and code will not be working. So, it kind of will fall on the police department, I would think, to ensure that we're not totally clogging up the sidewalks and making them not passable. Thank you.
Yes, I completely agree with that assessment. And I also want to assure you that part of the application process does require having a sketch and a diagram of where any outdoor provisions would be to try to prevent any of those issues from happening. And on-site inspections would be a part of the permitting process. As you said, might not be perfect in action, but every effort will be taken to be enforced right at the outset. And then also the police department has been a part of this process and is going to be informed of every application as we go through the process to help ensure that that happens.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Any further questions from the council? Any further comments? Seeing no comments and questions and no councilors seeking recognition, move for a roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item C, tabled from our May 26, 2020 meeting, action item I, council resolution approving the school budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Is there a motion?
That's the question. Do we want to talk about what the school board has passed and present any questions to Mr. DiDonato, who I understand is in attendance tonight, before moving forward with untabling any of these items?
You would first untable an item to put it on the floor for discussion, and then there could be a presentation made by any staff or anybody else, and then the council can go ahead and approve, not approve, or retable to another meeting. That is the process. So if anyone wants to make the motion to untable, I think it's assigned to Councilor Purdy. We can move forward with that, or it can wait until the following week.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Archer.
can I place a motion to set aside the rules for us to discuss this before we untable it? That is the motion, to set aside the rules.
Second.
There's been a motion to set aside the rules and operate outside of our normal boundaries and normal action items to discuss the school budget discussion only. And there's been a second by Councilor Copeland. So there's been a valid motion, a valid second. Any discussion on setting aside the rules and hearing and discussing the item without untabling it? Councilor Gunn.
Just a procedural question. Would not be, I don't see the problem of just simply untabling it and discussing it and including Mr. Donato and anyone else who wants to talk about it. And if we change our minds, can't we retable the item?
You can make another motion to table, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on setting aside the rules to have a discussion on the school board? Councilor Gunn, your hand is up. Is that from before? Okay. All right. Thank you. With that, no councilors seeking recognition, no further discussion on setting aside the rules. Call for a roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
No.
Councilor Copeland.
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn.
No.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2 to set aside the rules and discuss the school budget prior to untabling. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, could we promote Mr. DiDonato to come forward and explain the current budget the school is proposing for the coming 2020-2021 budget?
We can. Andrew, can you promote School Finance Director DiDonato, please? Thank you. School Finance Director DiDonato, thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure. The superintendent is also available if you would like to have questions for him as well. I believe
If
he's on as well.
Excuse me. Andrew, can you promote School Superintendent Tom DePatsy, please?
Here.
Welcome, School Superintendent DePatsy. Thank you for joining us. Jason, Dom, do either of you want to take the, one, did you hear the question posed by Councilor Minthorn?
Yes, so Councilman Minthorn, you're just looking for an overview on what our bottom line budget is now, what the school board looked to reduce in the last meeting on the 27th of May?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, sure. So the total current budget that was put forth from the school board is a total of $42,962,086. This is a reduction of $419,200 from the original approved budget that the school board, I believe, voted on the 20, I'm sorry, I think it was the 1st of April. These reductions are reflected in 3 cost centers. I did just want to reach out that I forwarded you prior to this meeting a revised copy of the resolutions. I had the stipends, majority of them coming out of regular instruction. The information I sent to you this afternoon was updated this morning, and I sent the wrong file when I was on the road. I had to pull over and do a hotspot, so I apologize for that. But the reduction for regular instruction was $355,750. And what that entails is a reduction in the stipends of approximately, the total reductions in contracted teacher stipends was $117,720. Of that, $23,450 is reflected in a different cost center. So if you're looking at your backup in this material, these reductions are posted on the school's website, but you can see that reduction in the student staff support in your budget categories. And then the remaining amount of regular instruction that was reduced was the Thornton Academy tuition. This leaves us with a 14 student buffer, which is a lot less than the school board's policy that they adopted, I believe it was 2 years ago, which we'd like to keep a 5% buffer due to, we know, the fluctuation of students, as well as a reduction of the MAT to 2%. So those are both risky numbers, but it does bring it down and it gets closer to the actual number. And if we do have a large influx or the MAT increases larger than we anticipated in December, we will probably have to come back to the city council for a budget amendment on that. And then the last item that we reduced that there was support for the school board was the school administration. That is one of the secretaries. We had an open position for our special ed secretary, and we've decided to shift some responsibilities around and not hire for that position. So those are the 3 areas of the budget categories that were reduced from the original vote from the school department back in April.
Thank you, Finance Director DiDonato. Councilor Copeland.
Thank you for that, Mr. DiDonato. And you've talked about it being a reduction from the $4 million that the school board voted on. What is the increase in percentages from last year's budget?
So the total expenditure increase from last year's is a 6.18%.
Yeah.
$2.5 million. Again, that's also reflecting restoring some of that $1.1 million in surplus that was asked for out of last year. So that's causing it's making the budget look a lot worse than it actually is. But.
Councilor Purdy.
Thank you. Jason,
sure.
Let's try to compare apples to apples here.
Yep.
What do you forecast to spend this year total? What you were budgeted plus the 1.1 plus whatever overages they're going to be.
Sure.
What are you looking at?
Sure. So this year, the way it was done was we had a school board approved budget. There was a reduction of $1.1 million to use for the surplus. We are projecting to spend about So essentially overspend our budget by reducing the 1.1 million. We knew that we weren't cutting those costs. And so to use the surplus. So we're coming in as an expenditure piece at about just over $1 million, about $1,050,000. So we're right on what the intent of the reduction was for the city council. Where the harder part is that we're having the larger of the deficit is the revenue piece. So we've talked about this on many occasions in several meetings, the main care revenue. We originally were forecasting back in January, February, that we were going to be about $500,000 under budgeted for that revenue. Once COVID kicked in, we were on pace to be, we were billing $19,000 a week. Once COVID kicked in, we were now an additional $250,000 deficit. So a total of $750,000 we were short on revenue. Now, the offset of COVID would be expenditures, right? So we should have some savings, and we do. We have savings in utilities, we have savings in substitutes, but that also adds up to about $250,000. So it doesn't help our overall financial situation. So it's almost like they level each other out. So we're looking at go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, yeah, I'm just looking to see what you're kind of looking at for an ending number at the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll be in a deficit this year, as discussed earlier. Let me pull up my document that I've been working on. Again, I'm going to have a full detailed analysis for upcoming budget meeting, board meeting. But as of what I've been working on, just give me 1 second. Looks like approximately our ending fund balance for 2019 was, sorry, it's just taking a little longer than usual, was $1.179 million. So $1,179,014. I'm projecting us between the loss of revenue and the over expenditures of the 1.1 of a deficit for this year alone of about 1.8. So we're going to be in the deficit as a whole, just under 700,000. So about 660,000 for deficit for this fiscal year.
Okay. Yeah, I guess one of the confusing things, that, at least it was for me to start with, I'm finally starting to get a handle on this. I think for a lot of other folks is the, let's take you look at the mill rate calculator.
Yep.
And right now it says, where it sits right now, it says 28,600,000, but I mean, that's not the real number. Your actual budget is what, 42,900,000.
Yeah, the 28 million.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to compare apples to apples. I'm looking to see what the total sum is going to be for the end of the year this year. All that was information that we had already had. I'm just kind of looking to see. My guess is, with the numbers that I've had, that you're probably going to come in right around there at the end of the year.
Yeah, and Jim, when you're talking the 28 million on the mill calculator, that's our tax commitment.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's what the ED 279 or the state of Maine requires us to raise in local funds, and then the additional local is the gap between what we receive in subsidy, what we raise in funding, and what our expenses. That's the gap difference.
Right. Yep. So basically, all that added together, I'm kind of figuring at the end of this fiscal year, you're going to come in at right around 43 million for the total budget.
It's what we approved plus an additional almost 1.1. So basically, we'll be almost on budget what was approved by the school board.
Okay.
For last year.
All right. Thank you.
Councilor Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, what about the revenues? Do you have any information about what the revenues from the state are going to be? And
so
What revenues are you considering in this newest iteration?
So the revenues that we've put forth is what we've put forth from the get-go. It's our preliminary ED 279. And unfortunately, I know there's been a lot of discussion around this, but we need to raise the current amount of required local taxes. So what happens is if they come back and do what is called a curtailment in the middle of next year, they will cut the funding mid-year. But for budgeting purposes, and you can talk with the state of Maine and the coordinator up there, you have to budget what they're anticipating giving us. Now, we're all well aware that potentially with the lack of revenue coming in the summer, there will be, or potentially maybe, a curtailment. If that happens, we have to deal with that at that time, but we can't budget unknown revenue at this point.
Well, it seems that we are budgeting unknown revenue. I mean, we always do, right? I mean, that's the given. We don't get that information until after we make the vote. But it seems, Well,
in theory, this is the biannual budgeting purposes. So they have set it aside. They reconvene. I think I said that in my statement on Wednesday, that they reconvene in July to discuss this, and then we'll make a determination in August. So we will be operating, and we will start to receive the subsidy that we have on our budget enacted. Now, whether or not they make a curtailment in the middle of the year, that remains to be seen. So.
Any further? Oh, Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Jason. So I just want to clarify, when you were talking with your deficit, so with the reductions, again, we have it down to $42,962,000.
Yep.
And you were saying that in reality, your anticipation with the deficit is what the school board approved at the $43,381,000. So really the deficit at this point in time going forward is looking at $419,200.
Nope, sorry, we're crossing two different things.
Okay.
There's a couple questions about where we're going to be finishing this fiscal year. And I think that's what Council Purdy was looking at, to try to figure out where we're going to end this year. And if we were on track for our spending, will be just approximately 41 million and some change, 41.5 million. But because we did the reductions of 1.1 to use our surplus, our actual budget for this operating is 40.4 million. So what Council Purdy was asking is, where do we see us ending? And I stated where the school board approved budget for this fiscal year was right around the 43 million.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 41.5 million.
Yeah.
So what we're doing this year is we have the budget that's been created in our expenditures is based off of just under $43 million expenses. However, that being said, there is no contingency. There's little wiggle room for Thornton Academy. Literally, there's only 14 students of a buffer, which is not many. We've taken all the summer work. We've taken all of our before and after school programming away. We've also reduced over $100,000 in stipends. Again, all those reductions that the school board has made through this budget process is just over $1.8 million. So we are at this point now, if there's any additional reductions, it will be personnel. And that's where we are. There's no buffer in this budget to help offset our deficit that we're going to be ending this fiscal year. The hope is, obviously there's some type of realized savings through our budget season every year. I don't see that happening very much. Maybe the last couple of years we've come in around, $200,000, $300,000 surplus, which hasn't been much besides this previous fiscal year of Thornton Academy, but it's usually really close budgeting, and there's not much room for getting the surplus back to where it needs to be.
Any further? Councilor Minthorn.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, I'm really at a loss here for why. I've been sitting on council for 4+ years now. For 4+ years, we've written you guys at least $2 million in checks to pay off debts of various kinds throughout the process, whether it was the RSU debt, it was the headcount error at TA one year. It's gone on, it's gone on, it's gone on, it's gone on. What I am concerned about is you're presenting a budget. You've got at least, according to you tonight, 650 debt you're going to carry over. I don't see or have heard anything in anticipation of how you're going to clear that in the coming year, other than, yeah, it's there. We reduced your budget last year in anticipation of revenue that you overstated, admittedly so. And you staffed a new program with monies that ineffectively had been reduced out of the budget, but you only did it on paper. And now your head count is forcing your budget higher yet. You're coming back after last year's reduction to cover it. You still have a debt. You still have uncovered sped costs at TA, which they told you a year ago you were going to have and apparently never budgeted for. It's ongoing, never ending. The taxpayers are tired of it, to put it mildly. I've had more calls saying, please, no mill rate increase. None. I can't afford it. I will have to move. We heard it in the public hearings. If I have a mill rate increase, I'm going to have to sell my house and leave town. We hear it again and again and again. The only people that are going, yeah, spend more, are the teachers who are on the receiving end. This is an unsustainable process that you're putting the city in, and you've hit the line. You've crossed the line in the sand this year. And I don't see how what you're presenting, and from the taxpayers I've heard, is an acceptable number. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Minthorn. Any further discussion?
Do we have a chance to respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I don't want to getting in a back and forth match, Mr. Minthorn, but some of the statements you make are just not true. Yes, you did give us a bailout but it was a $1.1 million. The additional boiler you're referring to is because of an error that was done by the city side, not getting the vote out to the public in time. And instead of doing another one, you decided just to fund the project in whole. So I feel like I understand there's some confusion on some of this and how this is.
Sir, I did not mention
Councilor
boiler
Minthorn,
at all.
Councilor Minthorn, please let
I understand the
finish.
confusion. I understand a lot of the frustration. I was frustrated last year at 1 o'clock when $1.1 million just tried to be reduced in various cost centers when I stated this is going to cause major confusion, and it was ignored by the previous city administrator. So I understand your concerns. I understand everybody's frustration. I do want to reiterate that our mill rate was reduced last year because of that 1.1 million and allowed the city side to go up over $1 on their mill rate. So over the past, we've had a lot of back and forth where the city helps us if we have a higher budget. We help the city if they're a higher budget. There's been a lot of back and forth as this has gone through, and we've tried to. I think the key is we've tried to collectively communicate back and forth. But I think the relationship is still very strained, especially with what we've been hearing back and forth. But I mean, I get it. It's not easy on both parties, but I think we have brought a budget that is fiscally responsible the best we can. That program that you're referring to as being a new program, those students have been in our district from the get-go. The difference is now we can bill for them. We're not creating brand new state-of-the-art facilities for these programs. It is children that we've had, and we've talked about this. So I get the projection as the revenue was off, and obviously COVID didn't help me even anymore. But I just think it's something we need to better work together instead of, maybe even how frustrating is it for us not knowing what the city council is looking for a bottom line with this budget process. I mean, how many times do we table it back and forth? So again, I think it just needs a better process, Mr. Mayor. It is frustrating on our end as well.
Thank you, School Finance Director DiDonato. Just a point of perspective is the City Council isn't required to give you a directive, nor did it give you a directive this year because of reasons that they've encountered in the past. But this is, if you look at the writing on the wall on the city side, they're coming in a maintenance of effort budget. Maintenance of effort budget is an actual reduction to the mill rate. So that should be forecasting, right? That should be forecasting the school board to say, oh, okay, well, they're looking at a lot of reductions. They're looking at trying to keep the mill rate low. They're trying to look at a budget increase of such an X amount of percent. Then maybe that's what we should do in tandem with the council. But that's not for you to decide, Mr. DiDonato. That's for the school board to decide. But that is a point of clarification that a directive maybe not given, the writing is still on the wall with what the city council was doing and where we were taking the municipal budget in this pandemic in the time of COVID-19. So just point of clarification. Councilor Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you nailed it on the head there. We have been very clear about not wanting that mill rate to go up and that these are extraordinary circumstances. So we're saying it. I don't know if you're not hearing it, but it's out there. I mean, we sent it back twice. What else do we have to say?
Yeah, and again, I'm not gonna fight for the school board. That's definitely their call. I do know that it was made clear though that the council didn't want positions to be lost. So we went back to as far as we could do to reduce the budget without losing positions. And I mean, I think that's what they heard. They heard that more than they heard get the mill rate to zero.
Well,
Thank you. Councilor Copeland, do you want to?
Well, I just want to say that we didn't say to remove the positions, and that's what we were saying, that we didn't say that. So it's sounding a little bit different now.
Thank you, Councilor Copeland. Any further discussion or Councilor Archer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I've been very careful. Just again, you know that I have problems with the revenue, that we're forecasting too much, that this was based on a January presentation. I've heard reasons why. I don't know if I can, I don't want to say not believe them, but I don't believe in it. That I like to respect the autonomy of the school board, so I haven't been providing direction, just kind of subtle cues, and I'm not being heard, it sounds like. Again, it still falls under 900,000, and you can everybody can say whatever they want that, oh no, we still have to include it. No, you don't. Or if you do, you take off that money somewhere else in revenues. I look at total revenues, not just line item revenues. As we operate, sometimes we move numbers around. But again, I've said I've been very concerned about this 900,000 because I think that will bite us in the butt. In the Marine Corps, they say if you fail to plan, if you fail to plan, you'll plan to fail. And I think that's what we're doing. And I've been very clear trying to not direct anybody. However, I want to see the estimated EPS cut in half. I'm not going to go to 100% cut it, 900,000 down to zero. I think we will see a slight increase, but we need to plan in the sense to be very conservative that maybe we don't get the full 900,000. So I would like to, again, we can't change these line items, but I would like to see a budget in which that's around 500,000 in revenue. Not
reduction of 500,000.
I am, and again, we're not the expert. We have to forecast. And with forecasting, we're just taking personal experience, judgments, and sometimes just pure hope. I don't see 900,000 coming in. I hope it does, but we need to plan so we don't fail. So I'm suggesting that that number goes to around 500,000. I don't want to say zero because I do see an increase from the state. I've asked around some people who have past experiences, and they're suggesting that we may see an increase, but maybe not the full amount. So if we just cut the number in half, that brings it down 500,000 in revenue, and then adjust from there. And that's all I have to say. Again, I tried to be very vocal, saying let's be conservative with our revenues. I don't want to ever go to expenses because you guys are the experts. You can identify that. We're the experts in the sense of the totality of budgets, what the total taxes are, what's the revenue that the city as a whole gets, and that's including school board. So now it's towards the end of we're at the 90-yard line. I'm now doing a quarterback sneak, or whatever you want to call it. I'm now suggesting that that number should be about half. Again, I've been very patient, tried to be subtle, but I wasn't being heard. So now I'm being vocal. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Archer. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. That was a lot. I mean, in fairness to the schools, I mean, a comment was just made that, they haven't been listening. I sent, reductions to Jason last week. A good portion of them are made up in what they ended up cutting. There were other areas I thought they could cut, and potentially maybe they will. But again, we need to be fair and consistent in this process. And if we were to go back to last year, the night of that budget, where I put forth that $1.1 million, I don't want to call it a cut because it was never intended to be a cut. And I made it vocal that night that it was a use of revenue, So I certainly knew that that 1.1 million was going to be back in this budget. I thought the rest of the councilors did. So really, when you go back to what they have projected now as an increase, it's 2.498702. In actuality, it's really 1.398, call it 1.4, given that 1.4 or that 1.1 million was always coming back in. So again, I just want to be fair in that sense to the school department. I don't remember last year, outside of myself and Councilor Archer, really any other councilors expressing any issues with the budget that was put forth. So for us to now be standing here upset that they added additional staffing when it was very clear to me, and I was vocal about that staffing because I knew this was going to happen this year. And here we are talking about additional cuts when we're going to be right back here next year because the staffing isn't going away. So to Councilor Archer's point, and I think he just was vocal about it. Where are we going with this? What are we really suggesting they do? And again, I suggested some cuts. Councilor Archer just said he'd like to see that additional revenue cut by 500,000. And again, to be fair, if you go back to these numbers, and we're talking about the city having cut down to maintenance. Well, in fairness, their proposed FY20 mill rate, I'm looking at the calculator here. Their maintenance of effort for this year was supposed to be $11.62. They're down now to $11.46. That's a 16-cent cut below maintenance. The city cut 18% to get to maintenance. So again, just apples to apples, fairness. Obviously, we're being told, additional cuts are going to be into staffing. So we need to recognize that at council level and not sit back here a week from now and say we didn't order cuts, because we are in effect ordering cuts. And so I think we need to recognize that if we want to go further below where we're at, we're probably laying off people. There's 211,000 $211,000 that we all know, both the city council and the school board know of, that's sitting out there that you all voted to approve. So there's $211,000 I propose that they cut out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Councilor Copeland and then Councilor Purdy. Councilor Copeland.
So I listened to not this past one, but the week before this, the school board meeting, and I was very impressed that the city side maintenance person and the school side maintenance person were working together. They were going to have meetings. They were going to have reports. But I don't see, I didn't get any emails or anything about what savings they're talking about, if they're talking about savings. But there still are ways to cut. I mean, why can't we do some of those things that were talked about that night? We don't have to push them off till next budget. Why can't we just make those decisions now that we are going to consolidate X, Y, and Z, and it's going to save money there. We don't necessarily have to hit the teachers. So can you give me an update on that perhaps?
Yeah, it was great savings. I think just what we tried to explain was that it's a savings on the school side, but an increase on the city side. So essentially, you'd be absorbing those duties. So unless
right, that was just on the maintenance, but weren't there other things as well, that other consolidating things that we could be doing?
Not at this moment, not that it was discussed. I think they went through, and we're already doing a lot of what you're discussing with like a purchasing power and working with the city, or we're already working with a New York County consortium with all the other school districts. So our pricing may even be a little bit better. So at that point, that discussion that was had, and Al can kind of chime in a little bit more. He was in there, and I think Nathan was as well. That, the idea was that the facilities is more of a swap from responsibility and not necessarily a true savings.
I remember that, but I mean, what if I realize that there are mandates that come down, you have to do things a certain way, but what about benefits? What about insurance? What about, combining things and, I mean, I can't think of all this stuff, but you guys live in this world. What can you sit down and talk about and figure out that can be combined?
On our own school department, or to combine with the city?
Combined with the city.
So we're already a part of the property liability insurance through municipality. Maine Municipal. We already work together with the same copier company, SPC, so that we get same competitive pricing through them. As far as health insurance, the health insurance plan is different due to we're part of the MEA. Dental, we did try that road, and unfortunately we broke contract when we elected to change our carrier. So that ended up going back to Northeast Delta Dental. So we have looked down these avenues, Lynn, absolutely, to find ways to save. The most effective way for negotiation that we have had is that we've reduced what the employer contribution is to match in line with what the city does for their employee contribution. So that's
about like oil and gas and have you gone, is the school LED that can save 12% of your electric bill right there?
Nate,
I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it seems that it should be common sense, and I just really want to know that you're actually trying to cut the expenses.
And actually, Lynn, so the fuel cost is the same that the city gets because we get our fuel from the city.
Good.
The heating is the same thing. We are part of the same group as the city. So yes, all these avenues have already been. We're either looked into them or we are part of them. So absolutely, we've done that for years now. Yep.
Have you sat down with Glennis and gone over, these things detail by detail? And
yeah, well, it depends on what you're referring to, whether it's utility costs or maintenance of.
I'm referring to everything.
Yeah. Anything that we're a part of, Linda, we definitely bounce them back and forth, or we're already combined with that. Like last 2 years ago, when we were updating our copier lease, we reached out to the city and said, hey, our IT said we're doing this. You guys want to jump on? You guys were able to save some because we were doing it at the same time. So yes, these discussions happen in between the city on the employee side all the time.
What about you just said that you have an IT department, and so do we. So why don't we, is there any way, and that may be one of the state mandated things, I don't know, but.
No, we actually, if you remember correctly, a couple of years ago, we were all one unit. Unfortunately, it fell apart once the leader, Dave Lawler, left. The city side and the school side's full leader didn't really branch out into both the school and the city side, but they are. I know that Chris and Ryan work hand in hand all the time, as well as Shane's now an employee of ours that used to work for the city. So these are definitely areas in which they're constantly talking all the time with reference to whatever their needs are. Sure. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Councilor Copeland. Any further questions, discussion points? Seeing no further discussion points and no councilors seeking recognition, is there a motion to untable the budget? Last call for a motion to untable the budget. Seeing no motion to untable the budget, move on to next item on the agenda, which is item D, a tabled item from 5/26/2020, action item J, council resolution approving additional local funds for the school budget fiscal year 2020-2021. Call, is there a motion to untable the budget or untable this item? Last call on a motion to untable this item, action item J. Seeing no councilors seeking recognition, moving on to item E, which was tabled from our May 26th, 2020 meeting. That is action item K, council resolution approving adult education budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Is there a motion to remove that from the table? Last call on item E, action item K on adult education. Seeing no motion to untable on items C, D, and E, we'll move on to item X, new business. There happens to be no new business at this time. We'll move on to item 11, administrative update. City Administrator Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, beginning with senior programs and assistance, this past Friday, we held our 9th senior meals program. We again did approximately 250 meals, which is excellent. This Friday, June 5th, we'll be holding the same time, same place, 11 to 12:30 p.m. And again, thank you to everyone for being involved and your assistance there. COVID-19 response, the City Hall is now open by appointment only. There's been, as of today, very heavy call volume, especially with regard to demand on our finance clerks with car registrations and many other things. We're asking for the public's patience as we handle a approximately 3-month backlog of city business. There's also altered traffic flow. You'll notice on the first floor to respect social distancing as well as physical barriers put up at various customer service counters. So residents should call the main line to City Hall and use the phone tree to select the appropriate department in which to make an appointment. And again, we ask for everyone's patience in these first few weeks as we catch up on a very, very large backlog of city business. So we will be doing by appointment only, as I previously stated, through the month of June, at which point we'll reevaluate fully reopening our doors, possibly on July 1st, with in conjunction with the next phase of the governor's reopening plan. Our COVID hotline number is still up and running, 207-294-2436. Please feel free to call if we can provide any other assistance to you there. I did just want to review beach parking passes. That is something that is very much in demand over the next coming weeks. The parking kiosk meters are being installed this Wednesday, June 3rd at Bayview Beach and Camp Ellis. If you're a Saco resident, one of the easiest ways to get a parking pass is simply to pay for an all-day pass at one of these meters and keep the receipt. And then if you submit a copy of the $10 receipt and proof of Saco residency to us, we will mail you back your parking pass for the summer. Otherwise, online payment for parking passes is coming soon. For now, you can pay in one of the following ways. I'll just review very quickly. Parking pass by mail, submit a copy of your registration and a check for $10 to the finance department at the City Hall address. We will send you a pass by mail. If you qualify for a free parking pass, please also submit proof of age or disabled veteran status. Parking pass by Dropbox, submit a copy of your registration and a check for $10 to the night deposit box at Saco City Hall. We will send your pass by mail. If you qualify for a free parking pass, please also submit proof of age or disabled veteran status. The parking pass by kiosk, if you purchase an all-day parking pass for $10 at the kiosk meters, save the receipt, submit the receipt and copy of your registration, and again, we will send that pass to you by mail. For seniors, senior parking passes, if you qualify for a free parking pass and have already signed up for one of the Saco Parks and Rec's seniority programs, you can also request one through Saco Parks and Rec. If you are not participating in the meal program, you can get a pass mailed to you using any of the methods outlined above. So again, we please appreciate your patience as we catch up on this, and we know the demand is out there, but we are doing the best we can as quickly as we can in light of the situation over the past number of months. Another update on Election Day. Election Day has been moved to July 14th of this year. We're encouraging everyone to take advantage of absentee ballots if possible. Please fill out your absentee ballots at home and mail back to City Hall if you can. We're trying to cut down on the number of visitors to City Hall still. If you would like to come in and do your ballot in person, we will have stations set up here in order to do that. Absentee ballots will be available on June 16th. And please remember to vote. One last thing I would like to touch on. This afternoon, our police department, I thought, put out a very well said statement regarding the current matter with Mr. Floyd in Minnesota and the protests we've seen around the country. So the Saco Police Department did put out a statement, once again reiterating the values of the Saco Police Department and the service that we provide to the community and the mission statement of our police department. So if you haven't had a chance to review that, please look at our social media, look at the police department's Facebook page, and please take a look at that statement. And thank you to Chief Clements and to our entire police force for all the work they do on a daily basis to protect our citizens and serve this community. So thank you to them, and please review that statement if you have some time. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, City Administrator Canrath. Are there any council questions for the City Administrator, Councilor Copeland?
Well, I don't have a question, but I do want to acknowledge the good work that our police department does. These are terrible times out there right now, and I know that our police care about us. You know, they actually have a criminal justice academy, does train on de-escalation, but we have this simulator that officers can work with and train with on how to deal with certain situations that come up. So what I'm saying is that we're putting our money where our mouth is, and that our cops are trained to be to de-escalate, and they are part of our communities. I mean, the officers, they're reading at the Saco Scoop, they're having coffee with the cop, they're having the day off behind Burns School. So the policemen are a part of our community, and I really believe that they do care. But there also is a very important issue that I think that everyone should be taking away from this situation in Minnesota, and that is that we should look at our policies to make sure that we are considering all people. I think our purchasing should be looked at to make sure that people of color and women, if all things are the same, they get the contract. I think the same thing is true with personnel. So we're going to be looking at our policies and hopefully making a difference there. We're doing what we can. My sympathy goes out to the Floyd family, and I empathize with those who are caring about one another. I am not empathizing with the violent people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Copeland. Any further questions for City Administrator Canrad? Seeing no further questions, moving on to councilor discussion and comment under item 12. Any further discussion and comment? Councilor Minton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So once again, you state the facts over the last 4 years and you're called a liar by our friends on Beach Street. I'm rather over it. I'm in the position where they could give me a gold-plated budget at this point and I'd probably vote no for it, because I've heard the same noise for 4 years. They get their numbers wrong every year. They blame TA. They blame people moving into the area. They blame everybody but themselves for poor budgeting. I think it's time to focus on where the problem really is. And we need new leadership in our schools. And I'll probably be the only one out here saying it, but 4 years ago, the first budget I worked on, Dominic and I got into it, and he said, "Do you want me to resign?" And I said, "No." And that's the only no I've regretted the whole time I've been on council. I should have said yes, right there on the spot. And I think we'd be in a lot better position than we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Minton. Councilor Archer.
Well, I'm going to take a different direction. Not talk about the schools or anything related to a budget right now, but I just want to talk to all you Thornton Academy seniors. This is your last week. You almost made it. I believe it's Friday is your last day. So congratulations making this far. And I look forward to the next council meeting, which you are all new graduates and alum of our great organization at Thornton Academy. Same here.
Thank you, Councilor Archer. For any further discussion and comment? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to give, I guess, again, I'm one of 7, but some direction to the schools, since I don't think we clearly gave them a direction. I mean, Councilor Archer threw out 500,000. So I'm going to go ahead and essentially second that as a target figure. So there's at least 2 councilors for them to figure out where they want to go. Thank you.
Councilor Johnston, that's 5,000, or excuse me, that's 500,000 off of revenues expenditure, or is that 500,000 just in reduction? Because I think Councilor Archer was talking about $5,000 in revenue projection.
And specifically revenue, yes.
He was, but you're going to have to equal it out by reducing the expenditures.
Thank you. Any further discussion and comment? Seeing no further discussion and comment, we have no executive session and no need to report from executive session. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Minthorn, second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, a roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 7-0 at 8:02 p.m. Again, thank you everybody for your work tonight. Be well and stay safe.
Take care.